Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to HK Cheating Stories. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's get the story started. My name is Jason Miller, and for years, I let my ex-wife and her smug new husband write the story of who I was. Weak, lost, barely hanging on. I stayed quiet, let them smile in my face while they tried to dismantle my life behind the scenes. But the truth? I wasn't broken. I was rebuilding, brick by brick. And the moment they tried to ambush me at my kids' school drop-off, smirking at the life they thought I'd never have again, that was the day everything changed. You want to know what really happened? Let me take you back to where it all began. I pulled up to the curb, engine idling, as the early morning sun cast long shadows across the school parking lot. The backseat of my car was alive with chatter. Ben and Lily were buzzing with excitement about their first day back at school. I should have been smiling, feeling that contagious joy only children can spark. But I wasn't. Instead, a knot sat heavy in my stomach, twisted tight and unmoving. Call it intuition, call it trauma. But I knew what was coming. I didn't need a calendar or a warning text. I could already see them in my mind's eye. Rachel and Trevor, waiting like vultures with perfect posture and that signature smugness, ready to play their little game. It was always a performance with them, and I was always their unwilling audience. "Daddy, are you okay?" Lily's voice, soft and sweet, pierced the haze of my thoughts. I caught her eyes in the rearview mirror. Big, brown, innocent. Eyes that didn't need to see the storm raging beneath my skin. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile that felt like lifting a 100-pound weight. "It's your big day. Let's make it awesome." I killed the engine and stepped out, grabbing my bag and circling around to help them with their backpacks. The moment I opened the door for Ben, the smell of his favorite bubble gum filled the air. Lily clung to her pink unicorn lunchbox like it was a sacred artifact. Their excitement, it was real, raw, beautiful, and for a split second, it steadied me. Then I saw them, Rachel and Trevor, standing just beyond the crossing guard, as if they owned the damn sidewalk. Her designer coat looked like it came straight off a runway. His arms were crossed, his expression smug, sunglasses perched atop his head like some budget Bond villain. And their smiles, God, those smiles, too wide, too practiced. I didn't need a decoder to know this wasn't going to be a friendly hello. My stomach dropped like a stone, but my face remained calm. No way in hell was I giving them the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. "David," Rachel said. Her voice dipped in honey, sarcasm bleeding through every syllable. "What a surprise to see you here." I bit the inside of my cheek. "Stay cool, stay grounded. It's school drop-off, Rachel." I replied evenly, not breaking eye contact. "Where else would I be?" She smirked. That same damn smirk I used to find charming back when I was too blind to see the woman behind it. "Well, you know," she said, brushing invisible lint from her sleeve. "Some parents get distracted, show up late. I just wasn't sure you'd be on time." It wasn't a comment. It was an attack. A finely sharpened blade coated in sugar. Trevor, standing behind her like a loyal Doberman, chuckled. It was low, condescending, meant to provoke. "Nice to see you still trying, man," he said, voice smug. "Even after everything. Still trying." That one hit harder than it should have. But I swallowed it down. Rachel bent down suddenly, her tone shifting as she addressed Ben and Lily. "My darlings. Did Daddy make sure you had everything for school?" Ben offered a polite nod. Lily glanced at me before hesitantly stepping toward her. My daughter's always been sharp, sharper than her age would suggest, and I could see the discomfort in her eyes. She sensed the tension, the hostility dressed in civility. Rachel kept playing the role of doting mother while Trevor just stood there, gloating. His eyes flicked to me with the smugness of a man who thought he'd won. A man who thought I was nothing more than a background character in his version of my life. I clenched my fists at my sides, the skin stretched tight across my knuckles. But I stayed calm, because they wanted a reaction, and I wasn't going to give them one. "All right, kids," I said firmly. "Let's get you to class." As I turned to walk them toward the entrance, Trevor called out behind me, his voice loud enough for the nearby parents to hear. "Hey, David, don't take it so personally. We're all here for the kids, right? No need to make things awkward." I stopped, slowly turned back. "Awkward?" I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Awkward would be me commenting on your parenting, Trevor. But I won't stoop that low." His smirk faltered for the first time, and for just a second, I nearly laughed. As Ben and Lily skipped ahead, I straightened my shoulders and took one last look back. Rachel's smile twitched, trying to hold. Trevor's eyes followed me, expression unreadable. Maybe they thought they got to me. Maybe they believed I was still that man, the one picking up the pieces post-divorce, barely holding it together. But they were wrong. I wasn't broken. I wasn't fragile. And I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The school building faded behind me as I walked back to the car alone. My kids had disappeared inside with their classmates, their little backpacks bouncing with each step. The air was still, but inside me, something was shifting. I should have felt relief now that the ambush was over. Instead, there was this weight in my chest. Not sadness, not fear, just a tightly wound rope of frustration coiled around my ribs. I slid into the driver's seat, closed the door, and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, long and slow. Rachel and Trevor. Their smug expressions replayed in my mind like a broken film reel. Every fake smile, every passive-aggressive comment, every damn glance that said, "We're better than you." For a long time after the divorce, I'd let them live in my head rent-free. They'd painted a picture of me as the guy who barely kept it together, emotionally, financially, even as a father. And I had let that narrative breathe, too consumed with survival to change it. But this morning, something had cracked. Trevor's comment, "Still trying, man," kept echoing in my head. The sheer arrogance of it. Like I was some washed-up failure clinging to the edge of relevance. That's what got me. Not the insult, but the assumption behind it. They thought they knew where I stood. They thought I was still stuck in the mud of my old life, struggling to move forward while they flourished in their designer clothes and curated happiness. They have no idea. I started the engine, but I didn't drive off immediately. I stared straight ahead for a moment, heart pounding, not from anxiety, but from something else. Something sharper. Resolve. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I didn't head to the kitchen for coffee like I usually did. I didn't collapse on the couch and scroll through my phone looking for distractions. Instead, I went straight to my home office. The door creaked as I pushed it open. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of my desktop computer. Sunlight streamed in through the half-open blinds, casting angled shadows across my desk. I sat down, cracked my fingers, and powered up the system. This wasn't about ego. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. I opened my business dashboard and began combing through everything: contracts, revenue reports, email chains, project updates. I wanted to see where I stood, without emotion clouding the picture. And what I saw shocked me. The numbers weren't just stable, they were strong. In the last 6 months, I had locked in 2 major contracts. Both had started to yield steady returns. My overhead was down, my client retention was up, and my new branding campaign was gaining serious traction. I opened an email from my accountant, one I'd skimmed over the night before. I read it again, this time with clarity. Reminder: investor meeting next week with Wilcox Ventures. Strong interest in long-term positioning. I sat back in my chair, stunned for a moment. They didn't know. Rachel and Trevor had no idea. While they were busy smirking in school parking lots, I'd been rebuilding, brick by brick, deal by deal. Not just my business, but myself. And suddenly, that knot in my stomach? It began to loosen. They still thought of me as the David from 2 years ago. The man who moved out with a single suitcase and half his confidence. The man who fumbled through custody schedules and spent nights staring at ceilings, wondering how everything went so wrong. But that man was gone, replaced by someone focused. Someone who'd weathered the storm and come out smarter, leaner, and hungrier. I leaned forward again and opened my pitch deck. The investor meeting was in a week, but I wasn't going to wait until the night before to prepare. Not this time. If they wanted to underestimate me, fine. Let them. But I was done playing defense. I was going to take everything they used to define me, the struggle, the silence, the pity, and turn it into leverage. I worked for hours without stopping. The pitch deck was restructured, financials reviewed, potential objections anticipated. By the time I looked at the clock, it was past noon, and I was just getting started. I stood up, stretched, and glanced at the reflection in the darkened window. I didn't see a man barely holding it together. I saw someone who'd quietly clawed his way back, while the people who left him behind were too busy celebrating their false victory. I wasn't going to tell them. I was going to show them. Because that's the thing about people who think they've won, they stop paying attention. And when they least expect it, the game changes. I turned back to my desk, reopened the financials, and smiled for the first time all morning. Let Rachel and Trevor have their smug drop-offs and their gossip behind closed doors. I had a company to run, and a future to take back. The momentum from the morning hadn't left me. If anything, it had grown. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had both hands back on the wheel. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was steering. I had just wrapped up a conference call with one of our newer clients when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was Lily's school. My stomach dipped before I even answered. "Hello." "Hi, Mr. Miller," the receptionist said. "Lily asked us to call. She forgot her lunch today." I sighed, rubbing my eyes with my thumb and forefinger. "I packed it this morning. She said her mom told her it was in her bag, but it's not there." "Of course. Tell her I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and headed to the kitchen. The fridge was mostly leftovers and energy drinks, but I managed to piece together a decent lunch: peanut butter and jelly sandwich, sliced apples, juice box. Simple. Familiar. As I wrapped it up, a thought crossed my mind. Rachel's mistake wasn't surprising. It was predictable. Her world was all about the look of competence. The curated image of the perfect co-parent, the perfect wife, the perfect woman. But underneath? Cracks. I'd seen them before. Too subtle for outsiders to notice, but not for me. Not anymore. I pulled into the school parking lot and made my way to the front office. Lily lit up when she saw me, her little face pressing against the window before she ran to the door. "Thanks, Daddy," she said, hugging me tight. "I told them Mommy said it was in my bag." "I know, sweetheart. No worries. Let's get you back to class." We walked down the hallway together, her small hand in mine. As we neared her classroom, I caught sight of Rachel and Trevor outside by the school entrance. Perfect timing. They were chatting animatedly with another couple, Rachel's laugh ringing out a little too loud. Trevor's hand was lazily tucked into his jacket pocket, his head nodding as if he were agreeing with some life-changing philosophy. It was all theater. Every movement practiced, every interaction choreographed for maximum effect. But I caught it. A flicker. Rachel's eyes met mine. Just for a second. Her smile faltered, not fully, but enough for me to see behind it. There was a crack in the mask. A moment of discomfort. Of recognition. I didn't look away. I didn't wave. I just walked Lily to her class, gave her a quick kiss on the forehead, and told her I'd see her later. And then I turned and walked back toward the parking lot with deliberate calm. Their laughter had quieted. I didn't need to look to know Rachel had turned to whisper something to Trevor. Maybe she was wondering why I didn't flinch this time. Maybe she was piecing together that the man who used to avoid confrontation, who used to slink away quietly, was gone. Let her wonder. Let them both wonder. The difference was subtle, but it was there. Control. For years, I'd walked on eggshells around them, especially Rachel. I'd accepted the way she dictated the narrative. Her version of the divorce. Her version of me. Even how she presented our kids' lives to the outside world. But this time, something had shifted. I wasn't reacting. I wasn't playing catch-up. I was building something. They didn't see it yet, but they would. As I slid back into the driver's seat and turned the key, the engine roared to life. The radio picked up mid-song, some soft indie tune about heartbreak and moving on, but I didn't hear the lyrics. My mind was already moving. Trevor's comment at drop-off still echoed in my ears. Still trying. What a joke. Trying? No, I wasn't trying. I was doing. Quietly. Strategically. With purpose. And the more they underestimated me, the easier it would be to surprise them. The real danger wasn't in their cruelty or manipulation. It was in their arrogance. They thought I was beneath them. They believed I was stuck. But I wasn't stuck. I was patient. There's a difference. I didn't head home right away. I stopped by the office, my actual workspace, not the home setup, just to check on a few things. I spoke to my assistant, reviewed some updates, and confirmed that the investor pitch deck had been forwarded to the Wilcox team. Everything was moving. Everything was ready. And as I stood at the window of my office overlooking the city, I thought about Rachel and Trevor, smiling for the world, playing their roles, completely unaware that their little stage was about to collapse beneath them. They had no idea who they were dealing with anymore. And I couldn't wait to show them. By the time I got back home from the office, the clouds had rolled in. The sky was overcast, dull, and heavy. Fitting, considering the storm I was beginning to sense beneath the surface. I dropped my keys onto the kitchen counter, poured myself a glass of water, and sat at the dining table, my mind racing. That flicker in Rachel's eyes at the school, it hadn't been random. It wasn't just a slip in her mask. It was fear, subtle, restrained, but unmistakable. They were hiding something. I could feel it in my bones. And I needed to find out what. I headed back to my office, closed the door behind me, and sat down at my desk. The glow of the monitor washed over my face as I logged into my systems. I wasn't looking for problems. I was looking for weaknesses, leaks, inconsistencies, anything that didn't belong. It didn't take long. While checking through my inbox, I noticed a message buried in the spam folder. It was from a name I recognized, Tom Weller, a vendor I'd worked with for years. Subject line: "Heads up, something feels off." I opened it. "Hey David, someone claiming to represent your company reached out this week asking for detailed specs on your upcoming projects." The email signature looked weird, so I didn't respond. "Thought you should know." My heart dropped into my stomach. This wasn't just shady. It was sabotage. I replied immediately, thanking Tom and asking him to forward the original message. Then I sat back in my chair, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. I didn't need to guess who was behind it. Trevor. It reeked of him. He'd always been the type to operate behind the curtain, smugly pulling strings while pretending to be above it all. And now he was trying to impersonate someone from my company? That was more than dirty. It was illegal. I picked up my phone and dialed Alex, my lawyer. "David," he answered, upbeat as always. "Hey, I need you to run a quick audit," I said, trying to keep the tension out of my voice. "Check for any unusual requests for financial data or project information over the past 6 months. Specifically, anything that might have come from outside parties using internal language." There was a brief pause. "Everything okay?" "Not yet," I said, "but it will be." After I hung up, I leaned forward and opened the business registry database I kept bookmarked, something most people wouldn't even think to use. I typed in Trevor's name, and there it was. A string of LLCs popped up. Most were old or dormant, shells for tax, sheltering, or vanity projects. But one caught my attention immediately: Northbridge Consulting and Acquisitions. Recently registered. Vague description, broad scope. And the kicker? It was filed less than 6 weeks ago, right around the time Trevor started hanging around at school functions more often, pretending he belonged in my kids' lives. My hands hovered over the keyboard as a sick realization set in. He was positioning himself to make a move on my company. Not just smear my name, not just whisper lies behind my back, but acquire it, buy it, take it, piece by piece. Arrogant bastard. He thought he could swoop in and clean up the empire I'd spent years building. He thought if he painted me as unstable, distracted, overwhelmed, people would start to believe it. And once belief took root, all he'd need was an offer. A lifeline. A friendly business proposal. I almost laughed. They thought I was still broken. They thought I wouldn't see it coming. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen, the cursor blinking steadily at the top of the page. This wasn't just some personal grudge anymore. This was calculated, intentional, a move on my life's work. Rachel and Trevor weren't just gloating, they were laying groundwork. And now that I'd spotted the cracks, it all made sense. The rumors, the subtle digs, the sudden appearance of Trevor in my professional circles. It had all been strategic, and it was going to stop. I didn't throw anything. I didn't scream. That's not how I operate anymore. Instead, I did what I do best. I planned. I started organizing everything. The vendor email, screenshots of Trevor's LLC registration, notes from recent conversations with clients who'd heard things but hadn't known where they came from. It was all fitting together now. Alex would find the financial angles. I'd handle the narrative. They wanted a war. Fine. But they'd made one fatal mistake. They underestimated me. As I stared at Trevor's company profile on my screen, one word echoed in my head, over and over. Game on. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, eyes open, mind racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Trevor's smug face. His LLC. The vendor email. The way Rachel had smirked at the PDA meeting like she still had the upper hand. But the truth was shifting. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. At 5:30 a.m., I got up, brewed a pot of strong black coffee, and headed straight into my office. The sun hadn't even risen yet, but I didn't care. While the world slept, I was already preparing for battle. I had 2 goals: reinforce my business from the inside and exposed the cracks Trevor was trying to hide behind that polished exterior. First, the client relationships. Over the past few months, I'd sensed unease from one or two key accounts. At the time, I thought it was seasonal tension, maybe concerns about the economy. But now I knew better. The rumors Trevor was planting were already taking root. The damage wasn't irreversible, not yet. But if I didn't act fast, it would be. I spent the next 3 hours drafting personalized emails to each of my top-tier clients. No copy-paste fluff. Each message was carefully tailored, an update on our current progress, a breakdown of upcoming deliverables, and a reaffirmation of our commitment to their goals. I attached current financial reports, performance graphs, and future projections. I wasn't just telling them I was stable. I was proving it. When the clock hit 9 o'clock, I picked up the phone and called my most important client, Brenda Thompson, VP of Operations for Larkwell Technologies. Her account alone represented nearly 18% of our annual revenue. She picked up on the third ring. "David," she said, cautious. "Wasn't expecting a call this early. I wanted to get ahead of something," I said calmly. "You may have heard certain things, rumors about instability in our company, or talk of a potential buyout." There was silence on the other end. "Yeah," she admitted. "Something like that came up in our last meeting." Offhand comment from someone in marketing. I didn't think much of it. "Well, I'm here to tell you it's false," I said, voice steady. "There's no instability. In fact, we're in our strongest financial position to date. I've emailed you documentation to back that up. But if you need anything more, anything at all, let me know." She was quiet for a moment. Then, finally, she spoke. "I appreciate you reaching out directly. It says a lot. I'll review the documents, but if it's solid, we're not going anywhere." By the time I ended the call, a weight had lifted. That account was secure for now. But it reminded me just how close Trevor had come to landing a critical blow. And I wasn't about to let it happen again. Later that afternoon, Alex called. "I ran the audit like you asked," he said. "No signs of internal breaches, but there has been a spike in external inquiries, most of them traced back to shell companies linked to Northbridge." "Trevor's company," I muttered. "Exactly. He's poking around, trying to make it look like your business is bleeding, so he can ride in and offer a solution. Textbook hostile acquisition strategy. Subtle, but nasty. What do we do? First, protect your relationships. You're already doing that. Next, build your case. If he's impersonating your team or requesting proprietary data under false pretenses, that's a legal issue, and we will pursue it." I exhaled. "Good. There's one more thing," Alex said. "You need to start thinking like him. If he's playing chess, you can't just defend. You need to strike." I stared out the window. The clouds were back. Heavy. Unmoving. Strike. He was right. I'd spent the last year rebuilding quietly, laying brick after brick while keeping my head down. But now, it was time to raise my voice. Time to remind everyone, not just Rachel and Trevor, who I was and what I'd built. I called a team meeting that evening, just the core group. No fluff. No PowerPoints. Just the truth. "Some of you may have heard things," I said. "Let me be clear, this company isn't for sale. We're not struggling. We're growing. And we're going to continue to grow. But there are people, outside forces, trying to shake that foundation." They looked around at one another, unsure, but listening. "I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you so you understand what's at stake. I need all of us aligned, focused, and unshakable. Because this isn't just business anymore. It's personal." By the end of the meeting, I could feel the shift. The room was tense, yes, but unified. I sharpened. Back straighter. My team believed in me. And now, I had something Trevor and Rachel would never understand. Loyalty. Trust. Resilience. They were still playing games in the dark. But I was standing in the light. And I was just getting started. The following week moved like a storm front. Quick, chaotic, and full of electricity in the air. My calendar was packed. Meetings. Calls. Last-minute adjustments to the investor pitch. It felt like the walls were closing in, but strangely, I wasn't panicking. Not this time. I was ready. By the time the day of the investor meeting arrived, I was already at the office before sunrise. I wanted the room to feel like mine before anyone else walked in. I set up every detail, presentation materials lined up, reports neatly bound, data charts projected on the screen with precision. This wasn't just a business pitch. This was my line in the sand. I greeted the investors with a firm handshake and direct eye contact. I knew the whispers had reached them. Rumors of instability. Questions about leadership. Someone, Trevor had been working overtime trying to poison the well before I could even pour the water. But Trevor had underestimated one thing. I was no longer the man who let people write his story. I delivered my pitch like a surgeon. Every word sharpened, every answer to their questions measured, confident, undeniable. I walked them through our growth metrics, our projections, and the new technology initiative we were about to roll out. Their faces shifted as I spoke, curiosity first, then interest, and finally, respect. One of them, Mr. Carter, the lead partner, leaned back in his chair and said, "Jason, this is one of the cleanest presentations I've seen this year. I'm in." The others followed. The deal was sealed. I shook hands, smiled, thanked them for their time. But inside, a storm was brewing. Not fear or anxiety this time. It was adrenaline. Because the real performance hadn't even started. That evening was the school's quarterly PTA meeting. Normally, I'd find an excuse not to attend. But tonight, I had a reason to be there. Rachel and Trevor would be front and center, playing their usual roles, over-involved parents, full of false charm and fabricated importance. They didn't know I'd come armed with a bombshell. When I arrived, the room was buzzing with small talk. Parents shuffling papers, teachers chatting by the coffee table. I spotted Rachel and Trevor near the front, laughing with another couple. Her hand was resting lightly on his arm, her laughter loud, calculated. Trevor was in full politician mode. Fake humility, rehearsed jokes, all teeth. I took my seat toward the middle, quiet but present. The principal gave the standard announcements, reviewed academic updates, then opened the floor for community comments. I stood. "I'd like to share some news," I said. The room went still. "I recently finalized a major investment deal for my company." I began, voice calm and measured. "It's a strategic partnership that secures our long-term future and puts us in an excellent position for expansion." Polite applause followed. But I wasn't done. "I also want to address a separate matter, something that's been floating around lately." I continued, turning slightly to face the row where Rachel and Trevor Saturday. "There have been rumors circulating about my business, about its supposed instability, and about me as a leader. Let me be clear. Those rumors are false." Rachel's smile froze. Trevor shifted in his seat, jaw tight. "The numbers speak for themselves," I said. "Our growth, our new partnerships, and now this investment deal, all prove we're stronger than ever. I don't usually respond to noise, but when it affects my reputation, and worse, my children, I will set the record straight." Silence. Thick. Uncomfortable. I looked directly at Trevor, and that was when I saw it. The mask slipped. His eyes, usually smug, always amused, were suddenly searching, calculating. Caught. Rachel looked at him, then at me. Her lips parted like she was about to speak, but no words came out. After the meeting, people filtered out, some clapping me on the back, others murmuring congratulations. Rachel approached, her composure fraying around the edges. "Jason," she said, her voice a forced whisper. "That's great news about your company." "Really? Thanks," I replied, keeping my tone polite but sharp. "It's amazing what you can accomplish when you ignore distractions and stay focused on the truth." Her smile wavered. Trevor didn't come near me. He stood by the wall pretending to check his phone, like he hadn't just been publicly cornered. As I walked out of the building into the crisp evening air, a strange feeling washed over me. Clarity. Control. Power. For the first time in a long time, they were the ones caught off guard. They'd built their little empire on whispers and smirks, thinking I'd stay in the shadows, too polite or too passive to push back. But that chapter was over. I had just flipped the script. And the fallout? That was only beginning. The fallout came faster than I expected. By the next morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Emails, messages, LinkedIn requests from people I hadn't spoken to in years. The buzz around the investor deal had made its way through my professional circles, and more importantly, through Rachel and Trevor's. I knew word had spread when even some of Rachel's old mutual friends, ones who had gone radio silent after the divorce, started liking my company's announcement post. They were paying attention now. By lunchtime, the ripple effects had reached their intended target. A message popped up on my phone. Unknown number at first, but I knew the tone even before I read the name. "Rachel, Jason, can we talk? It's important." I stared at the screen for a long moment. She never initiated contact unless there was an angle, and judging by the timing, I could guess exactly what this was about. I typed back a single word. Busy. Seconds later, another message followed. Trevor mentioned something about business conflicts. I think we should clear the air before things get messy. Messy? That was rich coming from the woman who stood by while her husband tried to sink my reputation and steal my business out from under me. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to meet, but on my terms. A neutral spot. No kids. No Trevor. We met that evening at a small downtown coffee shop. It was quiet, dimly lit, and empty except for a couple whispering at the far end of the room. I got there early and sat in the corner booth with a full view of the entrance. Rachel walked in 5 minutes late, dressed to impress as always. But this time, something was different. She looked put together, yes, but not invincible. Her smile was tighter, her posture more guarded. The confidence she usually wore like perfume had thinned. "Jason," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thanks for coming." I nodded, but didn't smile. "What's this about?" She glanced around nervously, then leaned in. "Look, I know things have been tense lately. Trevor might have overstepped." I didn't know he was going that far. I scoffed. Overstepped? He impersonated someone from my company, tried to sabotage client relationships, and created an LLC to acquire my business behind my back. That's not overstepping, Rachel. That's war. She flinched, then quickly composed herself. He thought he was helping us secure new opportunities. It wasn't personal. Not personal. I leaned forward, voice low. He used my name, my reputation, to push his agenda. Don't insult me by pretending that wasn't deliberate. Rachel looked away, fumbling with her coffee cup. Her hands were trembling slightly. For a moment, I thought I might finally hear something resembling an apology. But of course, she shifted tactics instead. "I didn't know the full extent," she said, her voice softer now. "But if you're willing to let this go, I'll make sure Trevor backs off. I can talk to him." I almost laughed. "Let it go? Rachel, I didn't start this. But I will finish it. And let me be very clear. If either of you makes one more move against me or my company, I won't just defend myself. I'll destroy everything you've built." Her expression hardened. "Jason, think about the kids. Do you really want to drag this into court? Into headlines?" I clenched my jaw. "The kids," I repeated, voice now sharp. "They're the only reason I haven't taken legal action already. Don't mistake my restraint for weakness." She blinked rapidly, her composure crumbling. Then, without another word, she stood, grabbed her purse, and stormed out of the coffee shop. I stayed seated, watching the door swing shut behind her. She'd come expecting to manipulate me, maybe even guilt me into silence. But those days were gone. Whatever piece of me had once tolerated her games had long since died. That night, I called Alex. "It's time," I said. "Let's move forward with everything." He didn't even hesitate. "I've already drafted the first round of documents," he said. "We'll start by alerting Trevor's investors and backers to his misconduct. Once that's in motion, we'll escalate as needed." "Perfect," I said, voice steady. "Make sure this sticks." Over the next few days, we worked tirelessly. We gathered all the documentation, emails, fake requests, Trevor's LLC registration, the vendor testimony. Everything we needed to build a full case. Alex reached out discreetly to Trevor's backers, providing them with the facts. The response was immediate. Within 48 hours, several pulled their support, citing ethical concerns. Others began requesting audits. Trevor's house of cards was shaking, and fast. I also began contacting key figures in our shared network, vendors, partners, mutual connections. Quietly, carefully. I didn't smear him. I didn't raise my voice. I simply showed them the truth. And the truth spoke for itself. Trevor's image, once shiny and untouchable, began to dull. Whispers started circulating. His name became a cautionary tale. And I stayed silent. Because I didn't need to shout. I had the truth, the evidence, the power. And now, finally, the upper hand. The silence was the first thing I noticed. No more smear articles. No whispers from clients. No sudden investor cancellations. Trevor and Rachel had gone quiet. Too quiet. At first, I thought it was the calm before another storm. But the truth was simpler and far more satisfying. Their empire was collapsing. Alex had executed our strategy flawlessly. The evidence we'd gathered, LLC filings, impersonation attempts, client statements, had been delivered directly to Trevor's backers and business partners. Some pulled out discreetly. Others made it public. One of his largest financial supporters released a statement. In light of recent ethical concerns, we are reevaluating our relationship with Northbridge Consulting and Acquisitions. Business speak for, we're out, and we don't want our name tied to your mess. I didn't gloat. Not out loud, but behind closed doors. I smiled. Because this wasn't just revenge. This was justice. Years of manipulation, smug smirks, and whispered sabotage, all coming to a bitter end. Then, just when I thought I'd seen the last of their attempts to salvage power, I got the message. From Trevor. Subject, let's talk. I stared at it, unblinking. After all this time, after the stunts, the lies, the war he tried to wage quietly, now he wanted to talk? It was tempting to ignore it. Let him squirm. But something told me this was an opportunity. And I never waste opportunities. I agreed to meet him. My terms. Neutral location. No Rachel. No lawyers. Just him. We met at a quiet restaurant on the edge of downtown. The kind of place where nobody asked questions and the music was soft enough to hear every word. Trevor was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth tucked into the corner. He stood as I approached, trying to put on that old, polished charm. It didn't work. He looked tired. Wrinkled shirt. Eyes sunken. Hands restless. Jason, he said, offering a handshake I didn't take. Thanks for meeting. I slid into the booth across from him and met his gaze, unblinking. Let's get to it. He cleared his throat, glanced around nervously. Look, I think we can both agree this has gotten out of hand, he said. Mistakes were made, on both sides, and I think it's time we de-escalate. I almost laughed. De-escalate? I asked. After you impersonated my team, tried to poach my clients, and launched a whisper campaign to destroy everything I built, now you want peace. He looked away, jaw tight. You've made your point, he said. The investors pulled out. My partners bailed. The company is dead in the water. You win. No, Trevor, I said, my voice low but razor sharp. This isn't about winning. This is about accountability. He stiffened. What do you want? He asked finally. I want a written statement, I said calmly. Admitting everything, your tactics, your lies, the sabotage. You send it to every client, every vendor, every investor you misled. You clear my name publicly. He paled. That would destroy me. I didn't blink. Then we're even. Silence. Then, finally, he nodded. Fine. You'll have it by the end of the week. And one more thing, I added, leaning forward, locking eyes with him. If you ever come near my company, my clients, or my name again, I will bury you. Legally. Publicly. Permanently. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. He knew I meant every word. I stood, left him sitting there alone, and walked out into the crisp evening air. And for the first time in years, I felt free. The statement went out 2 days later. Word spread fast. Within a week, Trevor's name was toxic in the business community. Rachel tried to save face, spinning stories, feigning ignorance, but no one bought it. She backed the wrong man, and now she was watching both their reputations drown. Meanwhile, my company was thriving. The investor deal opened new doors, new markets. My team was stronger, sharper, and more loyal than ever. And my kids, Ben and Lily, they noticed the change too. They didn't know all the details, but they saw a difference in me. Less tension, more laughter, a steady calm that had been missing for years. One evening, while we were having dinner, Lily looked up from her plate and said, Daddy, you smile more now. I laughed, ruffling her hair. That's because things are finally good, sweetheart. And they're only getting better. Eric, sitting across from me, raised his glass in silent agreement. His support had been my anchor through every storm. And now, we were standing on solid ground. Not just me. Us. In the weeks that followed, the shadows of Trevor and Rachel faded. Their power, their games, their control, it was all gone. And in its place stood something stronger. Peace. Purpose. Pride. I'd spent years letting them shape the narrative. But now, I own the story. And this chapter was mine. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just a battle over business or reputation. It was a test of character. The kind of trial life throws your way to see what you're really made of. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Dignity, patience, and truth always outlast deception. Rachel and Trevor built their lives on image, manipulation, and shortcuts. But I rebuilt mine on honesty, discipline, and quiet resilience. That made all the difference. For anyone out there, especially those of us who've lived through loss, betrayal, or the sting of being underestimated. Know this: you're never too old to start again, to stand taller, or to take back your voice. Don't let anyone write your story but you. Let them talk, let them doubt. Just keep moving forward. Strength isn't in how loud you shout, but in how steady you stand when the world pushes back. I didn't win by fighting dirty. I won by standing firm, protecting what mattered, and refusing to let bitterness guide me. And in the end, I didn't just protect my name. I reclaimed my peace. That's something no one can take away.